As we come together, infinite love unfolds as each of us. In this sacred now moment, I am aware of the presence of the divine. Sweet, sweet Spirit, infinite presence, source of all that is, abounding with love, abounding with joy, abounding with possibility. In my mind's eye, I look around. I take in the wonder of this earth, of nature, of my home. Each of us spins in infinity. Each of us channeling source, infinite good. I know I am one with divine mind, one with all that is. In oneness, I see my soul and spirit rise. I feel divine love with every breath. I see the universe opening up for each of us as we step through into greater and greater love. Hearts and souls wide open. We are each co-creators of our experience. In deep reverence, I know and affirm, I am ready, willing, and available for more good in my life than I ever experienced, manifested, imagined, or realized before. I feel divine energy flowing effortlessly as joy, as love, as possibility. I am mindful of what I am feeling. All I envision is truly mine. As I believe, so I receive. I accept all this as natural. All good shows up for each of us as each of us. Right now, each of us is manifesting divine mind's finest creation. I know that it's an expression of life. Each of us is energized by the same power that stimulates the ebb and flow of the waves on the shore. It is that same force that urges those seeds to spread their roots and to find their expression, their essence. We are each a powerful being, deserving of all the bounty of the universe. So again, I am ready, willing, and available for more good in my life than I ever experienced, manifested, imagined, or realized before. And so I know the words today inspire possibility. The music is joy. Our community is rich with love. I am in deep gratitude for our coming together. Each of us opening up as channels of divine good. I release this into spiritual law which expresses naturally and eternally. The life principle expresses as me, as us in every moment. And so it is.
So it is. It all comes down to one. There's only one of us. Yes? You know, we get worried about the politics of the day. Yes? And we get upset. And the thing is that the politics of the day have been happening throughout the world for ages. They've been happening in other places. We're just mad that all of a sudden it's happening here, in my backyard. Yeah? And the thing is that those politics of me, mine, and exclude those are against the flow of life. They're against the nature of life, which is pure oneness. And so it can stand for a little while, but it will crumble. It has to fall because it's not the nature of what capital L life really is about. And the thing is that we've been watching in the Western world this crumbling of what we call the white male patriarchy, let's just name it. Breathe. And that does not mean every white man. That means that there's a consciousness. Frankly, a whole lot of the men in the world are victims of white male patriarchy as much as the women are. Breathe. And we've watched this crumble and crumble and crumble, and what we're experiencing right now is sort of a last gasp. I've got to cling to this as hard as I can and push everything else away. And so to just watch that, to love it, and to let it fall apart on its own. There's a wonderful Aesop's fable that's called The Sun and the North Wind. How many people know that? Steve does, yes. A couple of people do. And it's the idea of the sun and the north wind decide to have a competition. They spot a traveler walking along the road, and they're going to have a competition for who can get that traveler to remove his jacket, right? And so the north wind comes out and blows and tries to blow the jacket off the guy as hard as it can. And the harder it blows, what does the guy do? Clings to the jacket harder and tighter. Finally, the wind blows itself out, and the sun comes out and just warms and beams. And what happens with the guy with the jacket? Pretty soon it's too warm, and he removes the jacket. When we fight and fight and fight and resist and resist and resist, what we resist persists. When we start to love, not the what's happening, but the underlying beings and essence and who it is, and see past the surface and love those people, they come right. Or they disappear. And so it's an invitation for us to take and live and hold that in love, even what we disagree with. I was having a conversation with somebody today who called me up and he said, Reverend David, sometimes I disagree with you, but I want you to know that you are still my brother, and I still love and respect and honor you. And I said the same thing back to him. And we're a family, right? How many people have families? How many of you have disagreements with members of your families at some point in time or other, right? And so, but do you still mostly love your family? And so and some people make it more challenging, yes. And so can we see past the surface? Can we see past the surface? And can we be that love? Can we know that there's a oneness? Can we know that there's a movement of life itself that says this stuff won't exist, can't exist, because it's anti-life. And life is bigger than the anti-life. That's my political rant for the morning. Thank you. So our whole month, this month, we're going to be looking at the idea of transcendent purpose. Transcendent purpose. And transcendent means surpassing or exceeding usual limits. It's above and beyond what our normal way of looking at things is. It's beyond the birth-death cycle, if you will, of humanity. It's what's a larger purpose that's going on. This is what I was just talking about. The word transcend comes from the Latin word scandare, which means to climb. And transcend means we climb so high we cross a border. We cross into something new. So it's moving above our normal perceptions, our normal limitations, our normal ways of viewing life. How many of us have had the experience of we viewed something as this is how it is, only to later realize, oh, that wasn't how it was at all, right? And so we lift above that, we transcend that. So we move above our normal perceptions and limitations. We can have perhaps a transcendent or spiritual experience because we're all spiritual beings. Actually, we're not spiritual beings. I'm sorry. You think you're a spiritual being having a human experience, right? You've heard that? Yeah, no. Your spirit itself, the infinite life itself, showing up as spiritual beings having human experiences. Take it back a layer. You and I are spirit itself, the infinite presence itself, the infinite life itself, being itself, playing or suffering, or playing at suffering, as many people like to do, apparently. So what we're exploring for this month is this transcendent or spiritual experience, and we begin by coming down to earth and asking the question, that's the topic, what's the point anyway? Why reach for a transcendent purpose? For some people, there is no point. Day-to-day existence is safe and comfortable. Not you guys, right? But you know people. Yes? We all have that in certain areas of our lives. Can we just be honest? We all have that in certain areas of our lives. I don't really want a transcendent experience about my food habits or my, exercise habits or my, whatever. Day-to-day existence is safe and comfortable. It's a known quantity until it isn't. Until something shifts and something changes, and all of a sudden everything gets shifted around for us, and we have to grow. We have to evolve. Ernest Holmes says the divine plan, that's in capitals, capital D, capital P, the divine plan is one of freedom. That's it. You want to know what the plan of the divine is? Freedom. That's it. See, many of us were raised in religions that taught that there's some big guy or gal up in the sky with a specific agenda, a specific plan for each of us, yes? And we have to find that plan, and without any clues, by the way. And we better do it or else, right? How many of you have heard that kind of concept and maybe were raised in that kind of concept? So we don't believe that. We say that creation is the logical result of life moving into self-expression, and the purpose of life is to be life. That's it. The purpose of life is to live and experience and express itself. If you want to know about the expression of life, look around at the people next to you. We're all expressions of life. The chair you're sitting on is an expression of life. This building is an expression of life. The music we just enjoyed was an expression of life. All of it is an expression of life. It's the nature of life to outpicture, to express itself, to show up in form, to manifest. And that's the only purpose of life, is to live, experience, and express itself. And we are individualized expressions of life living itself. And because we are life living itself, and because it has evolved to its expression to include individualized points of intelligent consciousness that's you and me, by the way, okay, that are different than rocks. Have you noticed? Most of us. A few of us, maybe not so much. And even different than animals and plants and other life forms on the planet, it's evolved to express something more. The basic instincts of most life on the planet is for food, shelter, and procreation, yes? Now, there's nothing wrong with that. We all have those same instincts, yes? Okay? But life has evolved into forms that can also transcend those basic instincts. Transcend and include, that's a phrase out of the spiral dynamics. We include them, but we lift above them. And choose and establish a purpose and meaning. And make those choices from ever higher, ever more expanding levels of awareness. Are you with me still? We get to play, we get to be conscious, we get to lift and expand and spiral out into more and more and more and more. That is the opportunity that is available. We have the choice of saying, yes, I want to go there, or no, I don't want to go there. But that's the opportunity, that's the game that's available to us if we want to play it. Take a breath. I need a breath. As we reach one level of awareness, as we lift up, another unfolds, providing us with greater vision, expanding choices, and greater tools. There are things that we today take for granted that 100 years ago were not available for human beings, yes? If you're not sure, thank you. Whoever just did that phone, thank you. So we can rise and we can transcend those basic instincts so we reach something else. Another unfolds greater choices through which to express life through us. So while there is no individual plan dictated by some anthropomorphic God out there, there is what Ernest Holmes calls a divine urge, which is a pushing of life, capital L life, itself to be and express more. And again, we can either clamp down and say, no, I don't want to do that, or we can say, yeah, let's go for a ride. Jungian therapists Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette, in their book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, said, it can be said that life's perhaps most fundamental dynamic is the attempt to move from a lower form of experience and consciousness to a higher or deeper level of consciousness. From a diffuse identity, which means I don't exist, it's just the tribe exists, the group exists. From a diffuse identity to a more consolidated and structured identity. All of human life at least attempts to move forward along these lines. So it's the nature of life to want to go higher or deeper or more expansive. There's no great specific agenda for each of us. But if the purpose of life is living life itself, then we're free to create, or not, our own purposes. We are free to choose our own purposes. I find that for myself and for people that I've talked with, purpose comes from what I call the soul level. There's a deeper level. It's not just what my parents want me to be or somebody else wants me to be, but it's like I sit with the question, what is the purpose that wants to come through me? And it's listening at a deeper level than the surface level. And it takes some time to do that. So we're free to choose our own purposes. And here's the good news. You can't do it wrong. You can't choose a wrong purpose. We can choose purposes that down the road we say, yeah, it wasn't such a good idea after all. But we're here to learn, live, and share spiritual principles, as we say in our mission statement. And so part of the learning is we get to bump up against things that don't work and find a different path. Yes? How many of us have bumped up against things that didn't work and had to find a different path? Yes. We can't choose wrong because there's no master plan with which we have to comply. And because we already are life expressing, we are already valuable and worthwhile. Nudge your neighbor and say, you are valuable and worthwhile just because you are. We don't have to prove anything to be valuable and worthwhile, contrary to what most of us were taught in our culture. Breathe. Take that in for a moment. Shake off any of that old detritus from the stuff we were taught. So our value is not because of our accomplishments. It's not because of our societal status or fulfilling a certain role. We're just valuable simply as a point of life of infinite consciousness experiencing itself as us. We are valuable because we are spirit, forming into spiritual beings, forming into human beings, and playing in this form. Yes?
Can you say that again?
We are valuable simply because we are spirit, forming itself into spiritual beings, individualizing itself as what we call spiritual beings. So the existence of us on a plane that is not just the physical, but something greater and more expansive, that then forms itself and chooses to play in human form, in this particular form. We could also choose to play in ant form, or rabbit form, or oak tree form, if we want to. We choose right now, I can tell that we're all choosing to be this, other than the chairs. I'm not speaking to you guys, I'm speaking to the humans that are sitting on you, okay? You guys are too valuable too, let me tell you. If you ever walk into a room with no chairs and you have to sit on the floor for some sound bath or something like that, it's like, hi Hillary, and and your old muscles that are tired and stiff sit there and go, but I want a chair. You value chairs. Yes, they're valuable. Just simply because they're chairs. By understanding that life's purpose is simply to be fully present and engaged in the experience of living. I'll say that again. The purpose of life is to be fully present and engaged in the experience of living. Got it? I'll say it again. The purpose of life is simply to be fully present and fully engaged in the experience of living. And when we know this, we can realize that our existence alone is testament to our intrinsic value. And now, what do you want to do? What do you want to do as this perfectly free spiritual expression in human form on this planet at this time? What do you want to do? How do you want to play? How do you want to be? What do you want to express? Each of us is infinite source individualized. I have an image that I forgot to send to Carrie, but you can see it up there in your imagination, and it's this person with a paintbrush painting on what looks like the sky, and a phrase on it that says, "I am source." Each of us is source. Each of us is infinite source, individualized, and we are artists with all that we need to create all the colors, all the brushes, all the canvas, all the paints, all the fabric, all the metals, all the notes, all the music, all the stuff we can to create whatever we want. Breathe. Take your arms and go out like this and feel expansive for a moment. Just expand. I am free to create. Don't hit the person next to you too hard. And just like there's no great plan of art itself that says you can only play a certain kind of music, you can only paint certain kinds of pictures, there's no great plan to life itself that says you can only be a housewife or a husband or a breadwinner or a, whatever. There's no great plan that says that that's what you have to do. So we get to play. We get to make it up and learn as we go. We can choose anything from the seemingly ultra safe, which is to sit with all of our creative tools and do nothing. Think of an artist in quotes, sitting with all the brushes, all the paints, the canvas right in front of them, all the inspiration they could ever have, and doing nothing. Okay? And we can choose that life. And there's no punishment for it. It's just, there's better choices, yes? Or we can choose a little bit less safe, but still safe, paint by number life. Okay? Which is of somebody else's creation and planning, carefully planned and organized for us. Or we can stretch out and ask, what does my heart, what does my soul, what does the spirit within me want to create through and as me right now? I like that question. I have a feeling you do too. That might lead us to a transcendent purpose, one that's big enough that it scares us. Because if your purpose doesn't scare you a bit, it's not transcendent enough. It's not big enough. Because a purpose should scare us because it wants to move us into bigger than we already are, which for most of us can be a little scary. Yes? What's that next step? I can't see it. The biggest human fear is not the fear of speaking in public or singing in public. It's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of change. And so any transcendent purpose will bring us to something that's bigger than us, that scares us enough. One that's big enough that we realize we're going to have to learn some new things and involve some other people and be willing to make what the paint by number people will call mistakes along the way. Got that? Are we willing to step into that much of the flow of infinite life? Are you willing to step into that much of the flow of infinite life? I'll try that one more time. Are you, not the person next to you, you, willing to step into that much flow of the infinite life? Yes. Great. Which, by the way, life is going there anyway. You might as well go with it. Because it's the nature of life to grow and expand, so we might as well say yes, because resisting the flow of life is futile. Yes? And so then that reframes the opening question into, what's the point in resisting life anyway? And we're not stuck with one choice. We can choose and re-choose again and again. We are not stuck with, here's your one purpose for the rest of your life, right? How many of you have had multiple purposes going on in your lives throughout the history. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a race car designer, right? And so I was, at 16 years old, I'm studying engineering books on aerodynamics. The first of the books on aerodynamics was out from NACA, N-A-C-A, which was the predecessor to NASA. I can't remember what the C stood for. Studying aerodynamics and vehicle physics and movements and metal structures and all that stuff. I was in there at 16 years old reading these engineering books that are like this. It wasn't part of my course I was taking. It was for me because I wanted to be a race car designer. That didn't work out, as you probably have figured out. Because if so, I would be in Italy today with the Formula One group. Instead, I'll just watch it later on TV. At the same time, I was building slot car motors and frames for some of the better racers in Portland who were better racers than I was, but I knew how to build better cars than they did. That was my teens. In my 20s, my purpose was being an artist, an artiste. I painted, I photographed, I wrote poetry. I lived a bohemian artist lifestyle to the best of my ability. I hung on to Jack Kerouac's Dharma Bums and studied the lives of Zen poets, haiku poets, and tried to emulate that as best I could. And then I dove into personal growth seminars, and then I was a hardcore cyclist, as some of you know, for many years. And now what is my purpose now? I'm a minister. I are a minister. When I walked into my first religious science church, and if somebody would have said, "You're going to be a minister," I would have said, "Bull stuff." And what I've noticed is that each layer contributes to the next. Have you noticed that in your life? How each layer contributes to the next. This is the growing and the expansion of the life energy in, through, and as you. When I became a minister, I could look back and say, oh, that's why I worked for 5 years for Amazon.com, is because I got really good at spreadsheets because of the job that I had there. Oh, that's why I was an events coordinator managing nearly $1 million events, so I could actually look at a budget, unlike many ministers, Carrie knows this too, and whose eyes roll back in their heads when they get to spreadsheets or budgets. I think it was Jeremy and Max and I were having this discussion a couple of weeks ago outside, that our love of spreadsheets, We see how it all comes together. We see how each layer leads to the next. And as we rise higher in the process, we become aware of the process itself. We become aware of the point itself, working in, through, and as us. And then once we understand that there's a process at work, we can become even more playful and more expansive and more free, which is the divine plan. So the question now is, what purpose am I, or do I want to be, pursuing and expressing now? And here's the thing. Most of us, sometimes we get to a certain age and we go, well, I'm really too old, Reverend David, to take on another purpose. My life is almost over. And if we recognize, what we say is we are immortal beings, we are life itself continuing to go on. Yes, we will have a certain amount of years in this particular body. Yeah? You've probably noticed that, right? Okay? And it will do things. It will grow. It will maintain. It will die, or decay and die. But the life within us goes on. One of my favorite little things that Ernest Holmes said in one of his talks is, I've met too many people at their own funerals to believe that anybody actually dies. There's an essence within us that keeps on going. So our purpose is not about what can I accomplish in this 70, 90 year, whatever span of life that I have. It's what does the soul want to create? What is my larger spirit's purpose, transcendent purpose? Can I get in touch with that? And even if I just take a couple steps in that direction in my last few years on earth, I've taken a couple steps in that direction, and that's what I take with me. We don't take our money, we don't take our stuff, we don't take all that stuff with us, but we do take the life experience and the growth that we have as spiritual beings with us. We take that essence with us. So that's the reason for, even if you're sitting there at 90 years old, I don't think we have any 90-year-olds in here, but, and ask, what is my purpose? What's the next thing I want to do? What's the next path that's opening up that I can go dance and play down? And then that guides us from asking a depressed and hopeless feeling, what's the point anyway? To a fun, curious, and purpose-filled, what's the purpose I want to express anyway? What's the purpose I want to express anyway? I want to share a reading from Mark Nepo from his book, The Book of Awakening. It talks about being in our own element. And he quotes Mechtild of Magdeburg, who was a 13th century mystic, a Beguine nun. And she says, "A fish cannot drown in water, a bird does not fall in air. Each creature God made must live in its own true nature." And he goes, Mark Nepo says, "This introspective seer came upon the wisdom that living in our own natural element is the surest way to know the inner prosperity of health, peace, and joy." Her examples are striking. All we have to do is put the fish in air and the bird in water to see the dangers of being what we are not. How many of you at various times have found yourself feeling like a fish in air or a bird in water? Yeah. Of course, it's very clear and obvious for both the fish and the bird where they belong, not so for us human beings. Part of the blessing and challenge of being human is that we must discover our own true God-given nature. This is not some noble abstract quest, but an inner necessity. For only by living in our own element can we thrive without anxiety. And since human beings are the only life form that can drown and still go to work, the only species that can fall from the sky and still fold laundry, it is imperative that we find our vital element that brings us alive. I vividly recall my struggles as a teenager when my mother wanted me to be a lawyer and my father wanted me to be an architect. Somehow I knew I needed to be a poet, something that brought me alive. The only one to understand was my boyhood friend Vic, who in the midst of qualifying strongly for pre-med studies, realized he needed to be a florist. For something in working with flowers brought him alive. This is not about being a poet or a florist or a doctor or a lawyer or an architect. It's about the true vitality that waits beneath all occupations for us to tap into if we can discover what we love. If you feel energy and excitement and a sense that life is happening for the first time, you are probably near your God-given nature. Joy in what we do is not an added feature, it is a sign of deep health. So I invite you to play with your purpose. What brings you joy? And so we have a couple of spiritual practices for this. The first one is to take some time to look over your life. Imagine lifting up overhead and seeing the flow of life itself being your life. Imagine you can see that flow. And then secondly, invite your high wisdom self to show you patterns, themes, and threads running through your life. And they may not be obvious on the surface. They may not be obvious. One of the things when I was young also was I wanted to get good grades. I also hated my mother and wanted to rebel against her. Those two collided for a while. I went from being in high school an honor roll student with a 3.8 grade point average to graduating last in class and having to take a class in summer school to finish off my high school. Not because I was stupid, but because I was angry. And so I get to look at where is that still showing up in my life, by the way. And so that's why I say when we look at the things that may not be obvious, they may be below the surface. And then the third one is take some time to ask, what is life wanting to express through me now? This should be a regular question that we each do. What is life wanting to express through me now? We can literally do this on a moment-by-moment basis. But on a larger picture, we can do that. Process, we can do that. And ask that question not looking for an answer, not trying to solve a problem or a puzzle, right? Just sit with the question, ask the question, and let it ripple through you. Don't try to get a label or a paint-by-number solution. Just let it go. Are you willing to play with that this week? Yes. Great. I want to close with a quote from Ernest Holmes from Lessons in Spiritual Mind Healing. He says, "In expressing more life, we are expressing a greater degree of the infiniteness of the Spirit. We are more completely personifying it." And that's really what life wants to do. It wants to personify more of Spirit through and as us, yes? This is the real purpose and meaning of existence. It is the nature of the Spirit to express through us, not in limitation, fear, or want, but in freedom. In freedom. So we have an affirmation to just remind us of this. And I'll remind you that these affirmations are always on our Facebook page and on the website in case you want to play with this during the week too. So say this with me. I choose to have fun expressing more of the infinite life in my life. I don't have to have a point. I am the point. Let's say it one more time with feeling like you really mean it. I choose to have fun expressing more of the infinite life in my own life. I don't have to have a point. I am the point. And so it is. Thank you.